I mean, I'm trying to do a fucking podcast here. I don't know what to tell you. What's going on? I was just in the middle of some deep audio shit.
You guys are?
Yes.
Well, that is thrilling.
It is thrilling, honey. Anything else before I hang up on you? Okay.
Welcome to Gear Club, the podcast that claims to be about the art of recording, but it's really about nothing. It will require total concentration due to the intense information that will be spewed forth by Stewie, Johnny, and their illustrious guests. And without further ado, here's Johnny and Stewie.
Hey, Johnny. Hey, Stewie.
Good to see you, buddy.
Dude, it's the best.
Oh, man, you are the best.
No, you're the best.
Okay, let's get it on.
Let's do this.
Okay.
What did you do last week?
Remember you came by and lent me the sitar.
Oh, right. You're the girl.
So I had the girl.
What are they called?
Youth in a Roman Field.
Nice.
Really beautiful band.
That was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. What did I do last week? I forgot.
Because I do now remember dropping off the electric sitar. That was good. That was a good moment.
That was a good moment. A band called Youth in a Roman Field. Three string players, ukulele, guitar, piano, and upright bass. Sort of neo-folk slash classical. All great vocalists.
How many members?
It's 5, 6.
So they all play, they sing, and
they all play and sing.
Wow, that's great.
And they're all from, I believe most of them, except the bass player, is from the cast of the Broadway show Once.
Mm.
So they're
great.
really wonderful performers, and everything is really unique and interesting. And instead of percussion, it's
great. Oh, really? So no drums at all?
No drums.
Great. So who in the band drooled?
So how did they get here?
Yeah. Who delivers the pizza?
Oh, that's okay. Not only that, you're tracking in a half an hour.
Right.
There's
right.
None of the mishigas about getting drums together, and also
reading and all that. Something like that. Do you cut to a click, or
maybe one or two things we did to a click, but and we did takes, and then we edited them together. But they're pretty consistent.
That's pretty good.
But also being able to do it here, everyone in the same room, people can hear it acoustically, take their headphones off.
So you don't care about leakage, right?
Yeah. Not in this case.
But I guess that's the other great thing about not having a drummer in that scenario, because the leakage is all musical leakage as opposed to cymbal,
Correct.
cymbals. So then you can open up room mics and have it be
That's right.
just a beautiful room sound. Okay, that makes sense.
And you don't even need to put up room mics because everyone else's mic is someone else's room mic.
Yeah.
And also, it's really nice for players to be able to take an ear off, hear each other acoustically, especially if they're singing live.
So you did a lot of singing live too?
We did a lot of singing live.
Love that shit.
We experimented. We went, we tried everything, and then we kind of pulled back what was unnecessary to keep the vibe of the track. But mostly, we try to get everything at one shot, but that way you really got to have the arrangement down.
Yeah.
And so most of the work was really just dealing with not the execution so much as making sure the arrangement was right, because there kind of is no going back.
Right.
Which is fun.
So 2 questions.
Yeah.
First question. Yeah. You're doing live vocals.
We did live vocals.
Okay, so everybody's playing live. Singer A is singing lead.
Right. We had her in the booth here. So the lead vocalist.
So she's isolated. Okay, well that answers question 1.
Okay, so she can fix.
Right. Is she playing while she sings?
Well, that was kind of an issue and it was a unique one for me. She plays violin. So her violin is right up. It's not like an acoustic guitar, which is away from your mouth.
Yeah.
Violin is right by your mouth. So I had to kind of determine each song if I was willing to be wed to her vocal violin balance.
Right.
And I had a few songs that really, I thought it was a problem.
What did you do when she played flute?
She can't talk right now.
Okay, so here's my other question. Because this has happened to me a number of times. What do you do for licensing stuff? Like if you need instrumentals and she's singing live and playing.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's come up a couple of times from me and it's like, I get the phone call, there's vocals on these instrumentals.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, because the guy's singing live.
Right. That's funny
I'm
because
trying to think of what record it was. Robert Ellis from Houston, singer-songwriter, kind of alt-country guy, really great record. And I just mixed it. So that's the other thing. I was just mixing. But a couple of songs he was playing piano and singing live. So I did my instrumentals, but you could hear the vocals faintly. But when I submitted the instrumentals, like 2 weeks later, I get the email from management saying, hey, these aren't instrumentals. We can hear vocals. But yeah, I said, oh, no, that's vocal bleed. And I had to email them back and say, he cut the stuff live. I'm just mixing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to take out the piano, which is the basic glue of the song,
right.
And then you don't have an instrumental anyway.
I think in the case, and actually it's funny because the Darden Smith record I just did, he played and sang live with the band. And that's definitely going to be an issue because his acoustic guitar is kind of what everything is built on.
Right.
But what I would recommend in that case is if he wants straight instrumental tracks without vocals, he's going to have to replay his guitar.
Yeah, double it. Well, I would even say, and I thought about this too, so I guess my question was kind of leading, was, you know what, you cut that track with the acoustic or with the girl with the violin, you get the track, that's the keeper, go double your violin.
Yeah, right.
Immediately.
Right.
Don't sing. And then you have it right there and it's fresh. You know what I mean?
Good,
but it's like,
good little.
But you know what I mean? That's the only way to deal with it. Because if you wait until later, then maybe tempo issues. Maybe he's not. He hasn't played in a while. He can't get the tempo. I don't know. Whatever. There could be so many, or you just forget to do it. So I mean, that's an important thing.
Very, very good, and especially in this day and age where
where everybody's licensing.
I know, because there's no other way to.
Touring and licensing, right? I guess. Yeah. Yay.
Okay, so those were two questions.
Those are two. Well, you answered the first one. The first one I was going to say.
The second one you answered.
Well, we both answered.
Okay.
Sorry. That's why I said it was a leading question.
It's a leading question to myself.
Right. Self.
So, where you been?
So I. Okay, this is
Enough
a little
about
bit.
me.
This is a little bit of a longer story, but I don't know, maybe about 1996 or 1997.
Well, that's going to be a long fucking story.
Yeah, I'm going to tell it in real time. So you guys better be patient.
Okay.
It's going to take 20 years
Pete,
to
order
tell
that second pizza, will you?
All right, I'll try to make it tight. But there's a band called Verbena from Birmingham who put out a record on Merge.
Verbena from Birmingham?
No.
That's the name of the band?
No, Verbena was the name of the band,
Okay.
and they're from Birmingham, Alabama. And they put out a record called Souls for Sale, and it was a really great alt-rock record. I still go back and listen to it. Very Stonesy, very kind of just cool sounding, really cool band. Well, when the alternative thing blew up, they got a really massive deal from Capitol. And I did demos with them down there. And I thought I was going to do the record, but then they did another round of demos with this young up-and-coming producer punk who had an engineer, and he ended up getting the record. It was this guy, you may have heard of him, Dave Grohl.
Nice.
So he ended up stealing the gig from me
Nice.
at Punk. Fast forward 20 years, one of the guys in the band, this guy Duquette Johnston, about a year ago, he reaches out to me, he's sending me some demos. He's got a really beautiful voice. It's not like, Verbena. It's more like folky, pretty, melodic, rolling melodies, but a little psychedelic. It's got like keys and, things are moving around. The background is really pretty. So we talked about collaborating, and it got to the point where I just said to him, look, let's just go in and do a week of tracking. Let's just start, because if we don't start, we're never going to, what I mean?
That band broke up.
Yeah, no, this is just him. So fast forward, like about a month ago, we're talking about recording, and I'm like, all right, I'll fly down for a week off to Birmingham and cut tracks with him and a drummer that he has, we were still looking for a bass player. And then one day at Water Music, I was sitting there, and I had this, like, the light bulb thing. was like, why am I going down there? Why doesn't he come up here?
There we go.
And I was like, why don't I see if Steve Shelley's around?
There we go.
Why don't we see if we can use the Sonic Youth Studio?
There we go.
Hey, my buddy Emil from the Holy Sons, he can play bass. He's great. He might have a week off. I sent 4 emails. Boom. Everybody's really cool.
Very, very producerly.
But what the point was, it was half that, and it was also half, why am I going down there to someplace I don't know with guys I've never played with a guy I've never really worked with together solo.
Studio that you know.
And I was like, this is great. So I emailed my manager and his manager and floated this idea. And of course, his manager was crazy. He loved it and booked a flight. And he came up last week, and we cut, for 5 days, we cut like basically basic tracks for 12 songs. And then I did a day of overdubs. He sang a bunch of songs. But the rhythm section of Steve Shelley and Emil Amos, who is my guy, Holy Sons, his record comes out in Partisan in a couple of weeks, and he plays every instrument on the record. So he's
On his record.
On his record. Right. So he's this similar vibe of singer-songwriter guy who, you know what I mean?
So
very collaborative.
Sympathetic to the
Sympathetic
concept.
to the whole thing.
Right.
Those two guys, the rhythm section, well, Steve Shelley, I've said this to you a million times, he's not really a drummer, he's a musician.
Yeah.
And that's such a big distinction. But Steve felt out every song and played along to the vocals and played around the melodies and just really added like a mood to every song, whether it was a rock song or a droney song, and that's what we did. It was really fun. Mic preamp, equalizer, maybe compressor, maybe not, right into your recording device. You know what I mean? Not a lot of dicking around, not a lot of tomfuckery.
That's right.
Right? Just get the good mic and the good sound, and that's it. And that's what we did.
Get the good player.
Good player, good mic, good instrument, player, instrument, mic pre,
good
device. Good night. Go fuck yourself. But no, it was really fun, and we got, like, I just listened to the rough mixes over the weekend coming back from Asbury Park, and they really have a great, like, energy to them. You know what I mean? And
well, that part of that too, Johnny, is you bringing that into the room. You bring it.
Yeah, bring something. Bring snacks.
You bring your dizzle.
But honestly, working with Emil, like also on bass, like both those guys I've worked with a bunch in different scenarios. You know, like Steve, not just with Sonic Youth, I've worked with him on the Kino Camino record, the Admiral Freebie record, like all the stuff. He comes in and I know him great. And Emil, we did his entire record, just me and him. He played every instrument. We collaborated just in the thoughts and the ideas of what we were doing. And he's since then played bass on 2 other records from me, and he's wonderful. And he's also really musical. And he comes up with these coolest riffs, man, on the bass that really make things move, but once again, around the vocal, but not fighting with Steve.
Is the bass his main instrument?
He plays acoustic guitar, bass, drums, keyboard. He's just one of these guys who just plays everything. It's really, like, I've never done this before. I think there was a Dino record where Jay played drums and then the bass player played bass and then Jay played guitars. Right. But I don't think I've ever worked on a record where it was just me and another guy and he did everything. And once again, it was the whole thing about, look, if we don't start it, we're never going to get it done. I'm never going to have 4 weeks in a row for him at this point. I mean, I'm booking into April now. It's like crazy. You know, we started the first podcast, I couldn't find a gig.
So, just for the listeners so they know, we're in September, so you're booked.
Yeah.
To April. I'm
booked into April, and we had this crazy thing where my manager emailed me and said, I would need to clone you 4 times for you to do all the gigs you got offered in December.
Wow.
Like, it was just, but this came over the course of 3 or 4 weeks. All of a sudden, things just started popping.
Ain't that funny? How the way it goes?
Yeah.
Do you get used to it ever?
No. So Monday I got an email from Chris from Domino, and last minute he needs, he asked me if I could help him record drums for a Real Estate song. So, and I love them.
Nice.
They're like, I've liked them for years. Like, I got hip to them. The bass player played on a Kurt Weill record when I was working with Kurt, and he was really super nice. And then subsequently Real Estate opened up, I think, for Kurt a couple of times, so I've seen them live. But that'll be fun. So we're going to run into water music. Just water for the day.
That's a good...
Yeah.
Also, it's nice to do like a one-off kind of thing.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? In March, when I'm sitting in fucking Spain, the south of Spain, getting fed grapes by...
your friend Paco?
By a 14-year-old pool boy, I'll be laughing at you guys.
I don't even know what that means.
I'll show you.
Yeah. Once again.
Anyway.
Are you going back to Spain? Seriously?
Maybe. So anyway, but it's at Paco's studio.
Beautiful.
Paco Loco's studio.
Beautiful.
So, and that's in the south. So yeah, maybe all in March.
That's Cadiz.
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 Cadif, as they say.
Cadif. They say it?
Cadif.
With
Yeah,
the
they don't do
list
this. Yeah,
thing?
yeah. So Stewie, that's what I was doing last week. So what do you got coming up?
Well, I'm booked up until next
Tomorrow.
July.
I'm booked up until tomorrow.
My manager, who I don't have, just called me and said, "You don't have a
Do I
gig
really
tomorrow."
sound like a pompous ass like that? You fucker.
What am I doing? Darden is coming up next week. We're going to mix.
Oh, you mix here.
We're mix here.
Nice.
We're getting, like, it's funny, we tracked it all. We did it all, as I mentioned last time, we did it all live in the same room, blah, blah, blah. And then once we finished that, everything else that's been done has been done the opposite way. People, like, vocals are being done in Nashville.
Oh, great.
I'm not there. He's not there. Strings are being done elsewhere. We're not there.
Oh, who'd you end up getting strings for?
Well, Mansfield did it.
Oh, great. Okay. So he did it in Bloomfield?
He did it in Montclair. Maplewood.
Maplewood, right. Okay.
But he's on the road, so we still may have one more thing that we need from him.
Right.
So it'll be mix time next week. He's coming back up. And then a movie that I'm going to do at Avatar.
Oh, nice.
2 different dates. One kind of like R&B thing and one jazz thing. This just came in last night. My manager didn't call me.
Shut
I don't
up, you fucking prick. Ken McKim is one of the top design and repair technicians on the studio scene today. Having worked at world-class studios such as RPM, Sigma, Allaire, Bearsville, and Avatar, where he is currently the chief technician, Ken's reputation precedes him.
Ken's repair company, Trouble Report, is Gear Club's #1 go-to when we need advice or repairs. Through his company Retrospec, he sells awesome tube DI boxes, compressors, and other goodies. After Hurricane Sandy, Ken was instrumental in reviving water music recorders, which took in 6 feet of water. He'll tell us all about that. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken McKim.
Ain't no use jiving, ain't no use joking. Everything's broken.
Johnny and I, we're doing this Gear Club thing,
Right.
but we really don't know anything about gear. And so it's
Barely
an
how to
unfortunate
use it.
situation, or how to use it. We figured the best way to get through this thing is to fake our way through it and to ask people who do know something.
We vary, neither one of us designs any gear.
Yeah, or can really fix it. That's why we
but
go to you.
The point is our concept is, from the front and just tweaking the
Right,
knobs.
that's right.
You know what I mean? And
We don't know
it
what's
works, and we know it
inside.
sounds good. But, it's good. I think it's great to actually just have someone deep.
Yeah.
I mean, when you told me about the snare thing on this, it totally was amazing.
John's pointing to the Retrospec juice
we
box.
were actually
Juice
doing this
box.
now, right? Okay.
Hey, could we just back up for a second and just maybe
Too close to the mic?
No. You're
Whatever.
an unconscionable ball buster. How'd you get your start?
I was a musician like everybody else.
Right.
And
You were smart enough to.
no, not smart enough.
Okay.
But I stumbled around for a few years doing, being a studio musician and then an engineer, and then for about 5 minutes I thought I might want to be a producer until I realized you had to haggle with record companies over money.
Until you realize our job sucks.
Yeah, that's right. And then it hit me that all those things that I had been doing, no, it didn't hit me at all. I was working at a place called RPM.
Sure. Bob Mason.
Bob Mason, and it was just being built.
12th Street in Greenwich Village.
Yeah, 12 East 12.
Oh, right by the cinema, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that place.
Right
That's
down from
Bob
the Lone
Mason.
Star,
He had this
yeah.
really amazing tone, right? A voice of speaking.
I don't
right?
remember.
Didn't he have like
had a voice
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
But he So he was hiring people, musicians basically, off the street to build his studio in return for recording time in the facility that would ultimately come from that. And I somehow convinced him I was an electrician.
Nice.
Yeah.
Without
actually being an electrician? Yeah, you're right.
So what year did actually
Unbelievable.
RPM burn down? Just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I had plenty of downtime there myself, too.
Yeah. Now, come on, guys.
I know.
You can never point to the electrical.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to be an electrical inspector,
Right.
and then the place is a nightmare.
Right.
Because I knew nothing about New York City or national electrical codes when I started doing this thing. In fact, the only thing I had really done was to wire my parents' barn in upstate New York.
Nice.
And I figured, what's the difference?
Right.
Studio, barn, you know.
So just
it's all
for
about-
perspective,
It
what
didn't
year
hum.
is this? What year is this?
What
sir?
year is this? Is 1974.
And they opened right after, like that's when they opened?
Well, let's see. Maybe I started working for them in 73, and it took forever to build the studio
Right.
because I was never sure whether we were building a studio or demolishing a studio.
Wow.
Right.
It just like we build a room, we'd tear the room down. Wow. It just went round and round.
Right.
And Bob he was very kind of weaselly about this stuff.
Didn't he live next door?
He lived in back. Yeah.
Huh.
So I convinced him I'm an electrician. I wire the place. And while that's going on, in the year plus that's going on, there's all this recording equipment sitting under plastic over there in the corner with all the manuals. And I thought, well, let's have a look at that.
Wow.
And I just kind of got in there and started reading manuals and trying to figure out what this stuff was. And by the time he was ready to install all this stuff, I was ready to install it.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
For those who don't know, it was a world-class studio.
Oh, it was really, yeah. It was
It did
great.
turn into that.
8068 Neve and
It
great outboard.
It started with an MCI
Oh, is that right?
console, an MCI tape machine, and all of that was actually really positive for me because I got to fix things a lot.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
Yeah, and then we got an 8068 Neve, and Bob, to his credit, said, wait a minute, if we're going to get a Neve, we really have to have a Studer, so we got an A80
Wow.
Studer, and we were off and running.
Right.
And then Phil Ramone did some stuff there.
Really?
Yeah, he did. Well, he did this live Billy Joel thing that lasted for, I don't know, 2 months or something. And he walked into my shop one day and he said, "You mind if we make a few changes in the studio?" And I figured, he's planning on putting a little Sonics up over here and there. And I walked in the next morning and he had a full carpentry crew in, and the control room was ripped apart.
Wow.
The studio was basically ripped apart.
Did Bob have a
Bob didn't know anything about this.
Get out, really?
No.
how did he react when, like,
Oh, he was fine. This is Phil Ramone.
yeah, okay.
Right.
And it's booked.
2 months.
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't care what he did in there as long as it was booked.
But you didn't undo it after.
Not at all, because it was great.
Right.
Softened.
Well, he made big changes to the acoustics in the control room, just big changes in the reflectivity of the front end. And then he changed the studio in a way that was interesting. His theory being that he was really going for the artist. Whatever made the artist feel like a star, he wanted to do. And so he put in lighting, and he changed things that improved the sight lines, and he went to town on this thing.
Wow.
He rebuilt the drum booth. Everything was a
Amazing.
positive
Wow.
thing.
Were you there when the Stones were there?
No.
Because wasn't there a similar legendary story that, because the front lounge had those windows on the street,
Yep.
that Keith one morning had someone buy curtains for the entire,
Oh.
because he didn't want to see the sun come up.
Oh my God.
That's one on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gone at,
So how long were you there?
I was there for 3 years. Yeah.
And from there you went to
Sigma Sound Studios.
in Philly,
No, in New York.
in New York.
Yeah. That was a hell of a place. Jerry Block, who ultimately wound up creating the Lynx, and he created it there at Sigma. Yeah, he rented a room next to the rooms that contained Sigma, and we just never saw him again.
He just sat in there and worked on that box.
And we'd have problems, and we'd knock on the door, and he'd kind of open the door a crack and look out and say,
Go away.
yeah, basically.
So just for our like youthful, the 10 people who will be listening to this pod, Gear Club, the Lynx is.
The Lynx is the first really intuitive machine synchronizer.
Right.
That was
so you can lock up multi-tracks.
Right.
Yeah, so that you could synchronize to, at the time, multi-track analog machines. And it still gets used to synchronize Pro Tools with, an analog tape machine.
Think about the days when you couldn't do that. You were really limited. It was revolutionary.
Yeah.
It was.
So Sigma, Jerry Block.
Sigma, Jerry Block, he was the day-to-day manager. There was another manager who handled business, and the place had all in-house engineers.
Right.
So it was kind of fascinating because I was interviewed and got my job, and there was one other guy who I met, the beginning of the week, and he had just gotten his job, and there was nobody else in the shop. And by and by, I learned that Jerry had fired 6 technicians, and we were taking their place, which was a little daunting.
Yeah.
It was a bear of a studio, and there were a lot of things about it, a lot of new equipment, a lot of stuff I wasn't familiar with. And the guy who had been hired with me was fresh out of Navy Technical, so he hadn't seen any of this stuff either.
Yeah.
And we were just turned loose on this stuff. And the only way we made it make sense at all was the fact that it was in-house engineered.
Right. And they knew the place really well.
Well, they knew the place, and it was also not in their interest to complain, to point out to the client that, like, look how fucked up this all is.
Yeah.
They just, I have the story I love is I walked out, I was walking down the hallway, and this guy walked out of a session, this engineer walked out of a session, and he said, you might want to take a look at the faders. Now, the faders were these crazy things that Allison Research had made, which had a little plastic band, a plastic loop that ran in a track. And you moved the band and you incremented up or down the VCAs that were in the console. And this plastic band, this whole mechanical thing that they put together was horrible. Just an incredible, just a nightmare. There were all things had to be in alignment, and the band had to be fresh, and it got scratched, and it would misfire. So, tracks, you'd be trying to increment it a dB, and it would jump to the top. So it was this crazy thing. This engineer says, you might want to look at the faders in here. I was having a little trouble. I walk in, and out of a 36-channel console, there are 17 faders that actually work. So he was doing a full tracking session.
Right.
So he just set the faders wide open, and he was using the mic trim to set the levels on the tape machine.
That's a house engineer.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
But that's funny you say that, because even I guess, growing up at the record plant where there were house engineers, I think innately I was kind of taught that also, because I'm pretty cool as a outside client. I don't make a big hullabaloo about shit either. You know what I mean?
Right.
My first reaction is to just work around it and not let anybody know something's fucked.
Well, you're sort of a rarity.
Yeah.
I think it's because I'm just an old guy who grew up in that world where people didn't.
Did the record plant have independent engineers?
Well, Whitman was an independent engineer who worked there, but
everyone
really,
else,
when you saw the schedule for the next day,
staff.
they had the 7. Shelley Atkins, Jay Messina, Dave Thoner, Rod O'Brien, and then the assistants, Jim Ball, Steve Marcantonio, me. It was totally like that. And every day you'd see who was working on what.
Right.
But yeah, totally. You would never throw the studio under the bus. You would never say anything about it.
Well, I got dragged into a control room one day. This engineer who shall go nameless, but was a big guy, a major guy. And he pulls me in front of clients, and he says, "Look at this." And he puts up an oscillator on a fader. And he says, look at that. And, I had decent eyesight at the time, and I'm looking at it, and I look really closely. And, okay, one of the meter needles is like maybe, I don't know, quarter dB, hot.
Right.
And he said, "That's the reason I can't get a stereo image in here." I said, "Okay, I'll go get a screwdriver."
Yeah, really.
Shove it in your eye. Shove it in your ear. How's that
Turn
now?
it up a little bit on the left and you're fine. But what's really cool is, which I sort of knew, but to hear you say that you came from a background that has so much to do with with music, with your interest in engineering and producing and playing, that it makes so much sense to me that you're so great at what you do because you have an also another level of understanding as to what we're all doing in the studios. It's not just a technical thing.
Yeah.
Most technicians I run into are electrical engineers and have never spent any time on the other side of the glass or even pondering what that is like. And that makes so much sense that you are so great at what you do because that is something you understand.
I'll give you a good story about that.
Yeah.
Technician remains nameless in a studio, I forget. Stereo fader having a problem. They call him the next day. He replaces the stereo fader. He brings the wrong type of stereo fader. And when you get pretty much 7/8 down from your mix, fading,
Goes
the
null.
signal just goes away. And he looks at me and goes, "That's not going to be a problem, is it?" And I was like, "Well, I am mixing, and I'm going to have to do a fade."
He knew it was the end of the song. Everyone knows the end of the song. You don't need.
No, he was like more than happy to just bust the move out of there,
Yikes.
get his check, and leave. And I was like, "Dude, I'm mixing a record. You can't. What? Blah 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 blah." But
I'm not sure Ken would have done that.
No, okay, but I get your point about Ken, totally musical. That's why the juice box is great, and that's why also, and we both bring our shit to you
all the time.
Like you're the go-to for us, and it's that whole thing about just the nuance of understanding what we're using it for and knowing what not to change. That's I feel like that's a big.
It's huge
thing. I sent a mic, a Tube 48 to somebody who once again remained nameless because,
by the way, this podcast is called Those Who Remain Nameless.
The nameless ones. Sorry, the nameless ones. But point being, great U48, sounded wonderful. I had a little crackle. He advised me to change parts, got it back, never sounded the same. And it went from being my favorite mic to my third favorite tube mic. And then... And it was really a bummer.
Yeah.
And I paid a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but live and learn.
I had the opposite experience with Ken.
Right.
Remember, we had that whole issue with my tube. It was making
Your 48.
My 48 this went on and on and on, and finally, it's like my favorite microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yes. And, a few, you mentioned it became a bear. You said something, it became a bear, which leads me to Bearsville.
Woodstock.
Oh, nice.
I just went up to No, you kind of made it for me. You
Sexy segue.
You set me up. And we're going to edit it that way. A Bearsville. So I assume you went from Sigma to Bearsville?
I did. I had gone up to interview at Bearsville while I was still at Sigma, and Bearsville was such a nightmare. I walked in and looked around, and I thought, nah, I'm not going to do this. I just can't do this. And then I went back and spent a few more months where I think, the other technician, the guy who was hired with me, got fired, and then there was just me.
Right. At Sigma.
What's that?
At Sigma.
Yeah, at Sigma. And it really, the heat really got turned on. And after a few months, I just went, what about that job at
Yes, it's nice up there.
And it was, it was.
But so when you first got there, how many rooms were there?
There were two.
There were two.
Yeah.
Was it the SSL? Or was it?
There were, what there was, no.
That was way later.
No.
But did you install the SSL?
I did not install the SSL, actually. There was a fair evolution that went on there. When I got there, there were two studios. One had been John Stewart's creation, and it had in it a quad 8, a 20-channel quad 8 that Ted Rothstein had added on another, I think it was 16 channels to, of just his design. So there it is. It's a 36-channel console with patch bays that just about fill the room the size of the one we're sitting in right now, and Ampex MM1200s. Nothing wrong with those. Love those tape machines, but they're a little old.
Yeah.
A little antiquated.
A tape machine that will go nameless.
Yeah. Yeah, the MM1200s are great. You could actually punch out. Like in the time it took to punch out, you could grab a sandwich. And it just sounded horrible in there. Just sounded.
This is the A room.
This is the B
room. Right.
Yeah, and it was acoustics a la the early 1970s. Really dead.
Right.
Everything really dead.
Right.
Big pillows everywhere, and it just there was no way to make it sound good. Then there was Studio A, where John.
Holbrook.
It's a good thing we're editing this because John Holbrook. Yeah, John Holbrook had kind of colonized the room, and he had he had just like a couch in there, and
Who's John Holbrook? Just for
John Holbrook
English.
is a kind of he's an engineer who I have the utmost respect
He's
for.
great.
He did a ton of stuff. Randy Van Warmer,
Oh, cool.
on outward. He's still actually engineering. He lives,
Still up there, right?
in upstate New York.
So he moved from England and just lives in Woodstock.
I think he was very early
Yeah,
at Bearsville.
yeah, very early
Yeah.
at Bearsville. And he even did some records under his own name, Brian Briggs.
Ah,
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So he did a couple of albums for Bearsville Records under that name. And then, at John Holbrook's advice, I got on an airplane one night and went to England to look for a Neve console.
Oh, amazing.
And we wound up with a Neve console. And then Albert Grossman, who owned the place, was, he had his own little take on this. And so we've just bought a Neve console.
Now, is this the George Martin one, or is...
No,
that's the Allaire.
No,
Okay,
that's,
gotcha.
that's
Wait, okay.
that's way ahead. But so we've got the Neve, and I said to Albert, we really should buy a Studer tape machine. That Neve Studer, almost inseparable.
Right.
And he said, "Oh no, not going to do that. Way too expensive. Not going to happen. Forget it." And okay, so I just tucked my tail between my legs, and I thought, okay, fine. I tried. And 3 days later, he's walking down the hallway, and he said, "By the way, I just took purchase of 2 Studer A80s."
Wow.
Early Christmas.
Yeah.
Right. But surely, like, a 2 A80, I mean, after buying the Neve, right, the Neve must have been the big investment, right? I mean, so...
The Neve was used.
Maybe not as coveted back then as they
Not
are now.
quite.
Really?
coveted.
Wow, can you imagine?
Yeah.
I know.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. And we went through a progression of Neves in the place. There were 2 Neves in Studio B, and then we bought a Neve from Ramport Studios in London,
Oh,
which
cool.
it's the old Who studio.
Right.
And that was a 40-channel 80s series, not an 78 with a separate jukebox. It was an inline console, but it had the 4-band EQ, 1081s, I think, or 1091s, actually. 1091s, and it was great. I mean, it was a wonderful console.
So you had 80 series Neve there.
Mm-hmm.
You had an 8068 at RPM. You had Allaire 8068 in not the great room, in the Neve room.
In the Neve room.
How do you like API consoles?
Well, did you,
I love all consoles.
were you? Yeah, the console goes nameless. Did you install the API legacy in the barn at Bearsville?
Yeah.
Nice.
I did. Yeah.
Because that was a really nice desk, and that room was an interesting setup.
Yeah.
So you were there you were at Bearsville up until you went to Allaire?
I was at Bearsville until around 1984, and then I thought I wanted to move to California. And I spent 6 months learning that I didn't want to move to
Right.
California.
Right.
And came back. And at that point, my job at Bearsville had moved to somebody else. I went back to Sigma. That was the period that I went back to Sigma. And
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there was a year of commuting between New York City and Bearsville on a bus.
And that's a 2-hour commute, right?
More.
That's
2.5.
Holy shit.
Back in those days, the speed limit was 35 miles an hour. That's how long ago that was.
And it snowed
Yeah.
all the time.
All the time.
But let's see.
And I was bringing up all
Okay.
these Neve desks that you worked on.
Right.
When you were at Allaire, you spent quite a while refurbishing George Martin's 80 series.
Yeah.
How long did that take?
It actually took about, I think it was about 6 months,
Right.
And
So it was in such a state that you it was like a total makeover, or?
it was in it's in the state where a lot of those older consoles.
Oh wait, this
are
is the
in,
one from Montserrat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were talking. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
which is that it had been sitting in a warehouse for 5 years.
Right.
So it was mostly disuse that
Right.
was the problem. And every time you pressed a switch, the signal went away.
Right.
So we replaced.
It's not a mute button.
Right. Everything's a mute button. It's a new console. Everything's a mute button. There you go. It's like,
Don't
why is
bother to
a
fix
mute
it.
button?
Very, very
It's a new
convenient.
modification.
Yeah.
Very.
I worked on that console with Whitman
You did?
on a fixed record in 1988
And in Montserrat.
in Montserrat.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
It was amazing how humid it was there. It was,
yeah.
and even they had the air conditioning running constantly, and it was still you'd
humid.
open the door and it'd be like a fist of humidity.
Wow.
Well, he's a specialist in moisture and consoles, which we'll get to.
Yes, we were.
That doesn't sound right.
yes,
but
I see where this
but
is
we'll
going.
get to that.
But yeah, so I could see that console being like in a state.
Yeah. It had a lot of gremlins in it, and all of them were electromechanical. Wow. It was, but what an amazing, piece of recording equipment.
Right.
And
I actually got a lot of people didn't get to use it because it didn't last it was untimely, but I did get to mix one record on it.
did you?
And it was pretty amazing in that room
At Allaire.
at Allaire, which was,
Yeah.
I'm bummed I never got to work there. That's too bad.
yeah.
You sound like you had fun there. Who were you working with?
I made about 6 or 7 records up there. But, in terms of all these different Neve consoles you've worked on, because you have worked on, those are only the ones that I know, but I'm sure you've gone and serviced them all over the world. Are they all, an 80 series, would you say that they're basically the same inside?
Yeah, it's all the same elements put together in every imaginable way. Even the broadcast consoles use the same basic building blocks. Transformers, op amps, And the only real difference is the Class A versus the Class AB.
And what's your thought on that?
What's the difference between that?
Ah,
Come on.
Divulge.
Now we're getting deep.
Divulge.
I don't think it makes a damn bit of
There
difference.
we go. Yeah, baby.
There you go.
Yeah, baby.
Now that's the kind of gear club we like.
Good. That's good to know.
If I can't hear the difference, it doesn't exist. That's my motto.
Which is actually true, right?
There you go.
But
What do
really,
you mean?
so that
No, it's
I mean, there's a difference in the way it works electrically, but I don't know. I'd really, really love to have, do, even at this late date, I'd love a full blindfold kind of evaluation
right.
of the two, because I just can't believe, not because my ears are great, but because of what I see on the test equipment and the results that you all get with this stuff. Are either of you shy of like Class AB as opposed to Class A?
No.
No.
In fact, I don't even ask. I don't really know what Avatar. I assume that's an AB.
No,
That's an A.
The equalizers are A.
Okay.
The what they call the switching module that's got the aux ends and all that stuff is AB.
Yeah, when it comes to making records, that's
Don't
the
matter
least
to
of my
me.
problems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've yet to have a problem on an 80 series desk.
Right.
80
Right.
series not sounding great, period.
Right.
But when you open it up, can you immediately see that it's A or AB?
Well, with the Neve consoles, with the 80 series consoles, especially, there's no question. You're either looking at a little amp block that's an AB animal, or you're looking at a card that's got discrete components on it that's an A kind of thing.
And all these new desks that have been made, even by Neve, since the 80 series.
Right.
Can you maybe explain why even Neve won't go back and make an 80 series again?
Because they're unbelievably labor intensive.
Hand wired.
Hand wired.
Right.
You just, you can't get around it. Hand wired and in a really fussy way. Just the way the looms were put together, it always fascinated me. Is, you could find a wire, and if it was on the outside of the loom, you could follow that wire down the loom, down the entire length of the console, back up to wherever it was going to go to, and it stayed in the same place in the bundle all the way through.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, who cares? But I did.
Yeah, no,
Right.
that's...
It bespoke of the level of attention that they paid to how they built those consoles.
So, but it could be done if someone wanted to spend the time and
Sure.
money to do it.
It could be.
But it's of no interest to you to spend that time making
Oh,
it.
I see where you're going with this. No,
Yeah, but I
no,
don't
I mean,
think you really want to do that to him, do you?
Well, no, because we
not
wouldn't see
fair.
him for a couple of years.
Yeah.
yeah,
But could,
it would be phenomenally expensive.
right.
Yeah, and these
But
days people are downsizing. It's not even
Yeah.
a question of,
Yeah, but as far as I can tell, 80 series consoles only go up in price. They
do.
But not relative to
It's-
what it would cost to make it.
I think it's also because, no. I mean, the Montserrat console that got sold out of Allaire got sold for $500,000, which was kind of top dollar.
Big console, though.
Who's going to spend more than $500,000 for a console?
Yeah.
And if you tried to build, not even that console, if you tried to build an 8068, which is only 32 channels, it would cost north of $750,000
I see.
to build it.
I see.
Yeah. So,
But you can't be reverse engineered.
oh yeah, it's all just it's a machine shop. It's people to wire. It's circuit boards. There's
Okay,
nothing.
I haven't talked him into it.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
trend is, for me, like, you have your 80 series, and then you had your 81 series, and then you had your Vs, and it seemed like the trend was more amplifiers, more stuff in the module, does more stuff, bigger, and those ended up being super expensive to build too, right? The VRs were like super.
They were pretty expensive to build. I mean, you have solid state logic to thank for all of this because they were the ones who pioneered the console that did everything in every way that everybody ever thought they might want to do it.
Right.
And so, you know.
And the VR came after that?
And the VR came
Yeah,
after
that was their answer.
Yeah, that was their answer to it.
I had a great conversation with the producer David Kahn like years ago. We were talking about, he was interviewing me on phone about like engineering. And I said something like, I was like, yeah, I'm not into SSLs. I mean, you know, it's like too much stuff, too many amplifiers. It degrades the sound. I mean, who needs a compressor on your hi-hat? And he was like, I like a compressor on my hi-hat. And I was like, all right, thanks for the interview. I gotta go. Clearly not getting this gig. Like,
this is going somewhere.
That's pretty good.
But yeah, I always felt, and I've had that thing where I've done rough mixes on those consoles and brought them home and compared like the basic track rough mixes, even on an API, for example, not even a Neve, but an API, like listening to the rough mixes and then listening to the SSL rough mixes. And they really, you know, they sound different. They do sound glassy or something.
Yeah.
But then you talk about guys like Barb Clearmountain, who's made like amazing records on the SSL, and they sound great. So it's just a weird thing that
right.
Some guys make it work.
I think I mean, disagree with me if you disagree, but any decent engineer can take a good performance and make it sound good on virtually any kind of equipment.
God bless you. This is why we love Ken.
Yay. That's right.
This is why we love Ken. Most techs would try to talk you into believing the opposite.
Not having the fader work at the bottom of the...
Right there.
So wait, you got him to do this podcast just so he could fix your fucking Mellotron?
Exactly. No, but so when you open that Mellotron, like we plugged it in, it didn't even turn on.
Right.
You're familiar with the Mellotron because you fixed them before.
Well, you mean like
at Allaire?
At Allaire,
right.
Yeah.
But had you fixed one before you fixed that one in Allaire?
No.
So you opened the sucker up and just went,
yeah,
talk to me.
Yeah.
Come to Papa.
I mean, there have been many, many instances. And one of the great things about being in these studios that I've been, like Sigma and Bearsville and even RPM, is that as a staff technician, I was afforded the time to be able to, if I got a piece of gear that I wasn't familiar with and it just needed to be fixed, I could spend 3 days reverse engineering it.
Right. That's great.
You know, tracing it out. And I learned a ton.
Right. Well, that's for the younger kids who are listening to this.
Right.
Yeah.
Younger kid.
You don't just sit on your ass. You dig in.
Right.
You dig in. I mean, it takes a certain temperament to do it.
Right.
You know, I have, I like to say, in my childhood is littered with like alarm clocks that I took apart and never put back together.
Right. So it's a type, right?
It's a type. Also, you're a pedal steel player.
Yeah.
That's a different, I mean, that's like,
yes.
I sit down, I play guitar and keyboards. I sit down to a pedal steel and I need to take 4 Advil just to think about the levers and the keys and the tunings. And that's a very complicated.
You do have to appreciate mechanisms.
Right.
Yeah. I play Pac-Man and I get a headache from both of the shit you guys do.
You still play Pac-Man?
Yeah, I still play Pac-Man. I'm old school. Vintage.
Wow.
Vintage Queen.
Is there anything that comes into your shop that as soon as it walks in, you go, oh no, please?
All right. I'm going to make a statement that really puts me in the, probably will put me in the doghouse. The Studer AA27.
Really?
I think twice about working on.
No shit.
Yeah.
827.
That's weird. As opposed to an 820.
Or an 800.
820, I'm not really happy about. 800, I'm fine. I love it. They're great.
But apart from the functionality of both those machines, I thought they were like brother and sister.
Which, the 800, the 820 and the 827?
Right.
They're close.
Right.
It's like the 820 was sort of the prototype for
Are
the
they
827.
self-aligning? Is the
Only the 820, right?
Oh, the 820 was self-aligning.
Right.
Yeah. And, nobody ever bothered with that. But
Yeah.
the 827 is just too complicated for its own good.
Wow.
And if it breaks, you're in trouble.
Right.
You know, it's great when it's working.
Yeah. Those things are smooth.
And the one thing that the 827 does that almost no other tape machine does is it will erase elevated level tapes back to nothing.
0. That's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Why? Just the tension is so tight against that?
No. It's about the efficiency and the erase current that's available.
Wow.
Yeah.
But also mechanically, that thing is smooth. The way it handles tape is beautiful.
It is.
You know, it doesn't make any noise. It's like rewinding and fast forwarding it's like driving a Mercedes.
Yeah. It's a complex microprocessor. Everything it does is microprocessor controlled.
Yeah.
So, no thank you.
Interesting. Wow, I never would have thought of that. Besides, like, Trouble Report, and you've done so much, you've been chief technicians at really great studios, some of the best studios in the world. So you've been at the studios themselves, not just someone bringing you stuff to your shop.
Right.
Any crazy stories about having to fix some crazy thing or somebody needing something that...
Oh, my God.
If not, but I would imagine if you really thought about it, there's got to be a million of them.
There are. I mean, I've been called into control rooms for some wacky things, but maybe that's,
For the next episode. John, wasn't there somebody who was it
Puked on the console of Studio C, the record plant,
really?
And the assistant had to clean it up.
Wasn't there a snake that peed?
We did that too.
You did that?
Yeah,
What was that?
me and Bill had a garter snake at the record plant, and he used to like slither on the console.
Yeah.
And then one day the API started shorting one of the channels, and we noticed it was
Pee.
wetness, and it was like snake pee.
From snake.
Yeah.
So you called Paul Preston?
Yeah. Paul was the one who figured it out. Paul Prestopino.
He said, any chance that you a snake that peed on the desk?
Yeah.
Ken, you're the best.
You are the best, Ken. It's great having you. And we hope that...
Ken McKim, everybody. Come on. Here he is.
Thank
Our
you.
main man.
Thank you. No, I had a great time.
Yeah.
This was fun.
No, this is perfect.
If we're good, we're good. But so who's going to help Ken with the Mellotron?
Right, Stewart, where do you want your free gear shift,
Right.
asshole?
Watch out of the skies, watch your ball. It's the world alone, no worries on.
This episode's record of the week was ranked number 1 in the Daily Telegraph's 100 Greatest Songs of All Time in 2015. David Bowie's Life on Mars from the great album Hunky Dory. Although Changes was the hit from the record, to me this song is the centerpiece of the album. It's been covered by tons of artists, from Babs Streisand to Michelle Branch to the Flaming Lips. It's a wild psychedelic pop ballad in the vein of an Anthony Newley song. Stewie has a real special take on it, so I'm just going to pass the baton to my partner in crime.
Yeah, baby. Babs Streisand. That's one I want to hear. What a great song. We just listened to a little of it. Mm-hmm. And besides being Johnny and I both loving the song from our youth,
Yeah.
and knowing it first time around, I actually had a little bit of a closer history with it in recent years, having to remix it for a film, for a Wes Anderson film.
Film the film.
The Life Aquatic,
Which is
with
a great
Steve
movie.
Zissou. Wonderful movie. And the reason for the remix, well, first of all, I don't know if you remember in that movie, Sal George, who's one of the actors,
Right.
does all these Bowie tunes.
Right. But he
And
does it in a totally different
He
style.
does it sort of, not quite bossa nova, but
Right.
in a Brazilian acoustic guitar.
Right,
Really,
which is genius.
His own versions of them. But there was a scene where Bill Murray has some dialogue, and they wanted to use Life on Mars, but Bowie's vocal comes right in after the piano intro, like right away. So the whole purpose of remixing the song was to take David's vocal out of the beginning before When the drums come in, I think his vocal comes back because there's no more dialogue. So I was sent the multi-track, and it was really great to kind of, first of all, listen to the basic tracks and kind of getting an understanding of how they actually recorded it in the first place, and then trying to recreate the mix. So there were things, obviously, you just pointed out there's a big slap delay on the drum.
It's fucking amazing.
And it was really a little tricky to kind of figure that one out. But actually, that wasn't that tricky because it was just a tape slap.
Yeah,
on
short delay, right.
A delay.
And, they probably back then did a tape slap, right? I mean, I would think, right? Well, how else? Well, I don't even know if they were like analog delays.
Talk to your brother.
Tape slap. I bet it was tape slap.
Yeah. We're not allowed to say tape slap. It was an eventide. And, the record is kind of amazing because it's got this orchestral arrangement, and it's almost, for those who are familiar with it, it's sort of an operatic arrangement.
It's totally insanely operatic. But also, like I said, it has this weird Anthony Newley vibe, too, with the string arrangement, and it's just such a wacky combination of many things, and the lyrics are just, take a look at the lawman beating up the wrong guy. You know what I mean? Their lyrics are just so graphically. Yeah,
it's almost like a Broadway show kind of production. Orchestral, but also like screaming electric guitar. Obviously Mick Ronson had a big hand in the record, and great piano playing by
Rick Wakeman, which blew my mind when I realized that. Because, I was into him when I was a kid in prog rock. I was a huge Yes fan.
Right.
And Rick Wakeman was the guy at that point. And then to realize going back that he played this beautiful orchestral baroque piano piece or whatever, it's just amazing.
Johnny Prog Rock,
Ricky Glissando.
Who's Ricky Glissando?
Rick Wakeman. Because he's glissing all the time. He's doing
And then he does that great at the end of the song where he goes into triplets, totally against everyone else. It's really beautifully executed. And the fact that we got to kind of just sample through the multi-track, obviously the multi-track did not come with any levels or with any effects. So you get kind of an idea of how far they had to go from that particular basic
also
track.
Super dry. Right, so all the reverbs on the strings and Bowie's voice are not there on these, which is pretty cool to hear them super just in your face.
Yeah, and just really drums, stereo pair of drums, stereo track. And what's also interesting is the drum groove against the basic piano.
Right.
Is it almost that's why in a way I wish that maybe I shouldn't be a producer, because there are things on that record that I would go, nah, you should think about the drum fill that brings it in. It's what kind of fucking drum fill is that?
What are you, nuts?
What are you, nuts? Don't you have anything better? Would be, and that's the schmuck that I am, because
where's my Lindrum? I'll fix that right now.
I would have kiboshed that drum fill, and to this day, it's
But I like how it's all on the accents too. It's that's what makes it the pop thing. It's and like you said, the theater type vibe. It's really just there are accents on every other drum hit.
Yeah, that's right. It's another thing I would have told him not to do.
Yeah, don't do that.
Who was the drummer?
Woody Woodmansey.
Yeah, I got one right. So this is
basically the band is basically the Spiders from Mars, the Ziggy Stardust band,
right?
With Rick Wakeman.
So
you have Trevor Bolder on bass, you have Woody Woodmansey on drums, and Mick Ronson's playing guitar. Ronson also does the string arrangement, which is pretty amazing. And he plays Mellotron. They have the credit as Mellotron recorder.
Right. But also you pointed out because the phone that rings at the end is on the Mellotron track. And as you pointed out, they had a mic in front of it.
Mic and a speaker, yeah.
And the fact that on the record, actually, they leave the phone in, which is amazing. They could have gotten rid of it as proof of the track we have right here. It's on the Mellotron track when the Mellotron is done.
Right.
So they could have just killed it.
Yeah,
but
they left it on.
Yeah.
So good. I love records from back then because there were no grids and there were no fields. You left things in because it wasn't that easy to clean stuff.
Yeah.
off. Like now you just click and drag, and it's almost too easy to make your records clean.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, I just remember growing up, and the first time hearing, this is the first Bowie record I heard, and I just really, obviously Changes was the hit for him, but this song always was in my world as just the majesty of it,
Yeah.
and it's a sing-along, just everything about it is perfect, and then it wasn't until later that I got into the actual, how great it sounds and how well it's recorded and how great the strings sound and the vocals beautiful and
How unique it all is. I mean,
oh, and also talk about the whole thing about how they edit the end, because remember, don't they edit like the piano? They go right. He's riffing at the end alone for a really long time, but then on the record, doesn't it seem like it goes right to the end?
I think the record is kind of weird too at the end, because when we listen back to it,
Yeah.
it did sound similar to that. Like the ending's a mess.
Piano's out here. So they must have just muted the piano at the end and then bring it
And
back.
then brought it back.
When you brought up the individual tracks of the multi-track and we listened through, I noticed at the end that Rick Wakeman he's still playing through on the multi-track.
Right.
And he's playing melodies and stuff like that. And then, I don't know, 4, 6 bars later, he goes into that really cool high bit that they end up using at the end of the album
And fading
song.
on that.
So what they do is they mute him on the last hit, and it's dead silence. The band kind of fades out, and then in the distance you hear a little bit of him
Right.
playing that melody.
So the fact that it's on tape.
Yeah, they must have just muted it in the mix.
And this is pre-automation. Somebody grabbed that
Yeah,
fader,
grabbed the
pulled
fader,
it,
or hit the mute
and then
button.
fed it back up. And
with a bunch of reverb, so it's like far away.
right, so that
It's like a
whole
room mic.
so that whole ending is
Is
a one-time construction
Yeah.
done live on the fly,
yeah,
including the fade that comes down.
yeah. No, it's great.
And the telephone, which is probably, maybe they were going to mute the telephone. They got the piano by accident.
They're really stoned. What a great production.
What a great production.
Cool.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad we picked this one because this is such a great song. Everybody should fucking hear it.
I know.
He's so wonderful.
I know. We miss him.
Is there life on Mars?
Hey, not for nothing, but aren't we supposed to be talking about gear?
I'm Professor Turgidson. A lot of people think
Gear.
it's just information about the past, but not me. I mean, I hold
Gear.
very, very sacred. Sacred. The way the farmer looks at the earth and he holds it sacred. The way a Christian takes the Bible and he holds it sacred. The way a lot of people hold their marriage sacred. That's how I feel about it.
Johnny, you want to ask Ken about that retrospect thing? Why don't we do it before he runs out on us? Like tries to get away?
Retrospect, right?
Yeah.
So you're super busy, in demand. So what brings around, like, I want to design this, I want to design that? Where does that come from? Like, at what point did you make that decision that you had the time, or what was the inspiration for just wanting to make, like, Tube DIs?
First of all, Bearsville Studios, which is where both of these things were born. And
The juice box as well?
yeah. I had, after a number of years, I had Bearsville nailed down enough so that I didn't have to come in and rebuild things, and
Right.
there wasn't a huge maintenance task to perform there. So I had some extra time, and I spent that extra time doing other things. And one of the other things, the juice box came as a result of somebody sticking their head in the shop and saying, "You guys know about that new Tube DI?" And I said, and I had heard about it. James Demeter.
Definitely.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
he had come up with the Tube DI, and everybody there was a buzz going on.
Right.
I said, hey, I don't know where to get one. I don't know anything about it, but give me a few days.
Yeah, give me a half hour.
Yeah, give me almost. It was almost that bad. So I dove into some Navy preferred circuits manuals and looked at what there was and came up with a little hybrid, and it was definitely more than a day or two. It was like a couple of weeks, and came up with the predecessor to the juice box.
And has it been refined over the years?
Oh, well, it got refined pretty quickly because the first one was too big and too ugly, and I had to winnow it down to something that you could actually produce.
And you put them in the rooms at Bearsville, and people started using them?
Yeah. I used them as my test bed. That's right. The squeeze box, it was another one of those things where I had a guitar player sitting in the shop, and he said, I love the LA two-way, but I need something I can just plug my guitar directly into. Right. Can't you do something like that?
Right.
He said, make it real simple, make it real dirty. Just something I can plug my guitar into.
It's a beautiful box.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Here we go again. The squeeze box has gone through the most refinement of anything. The juice box is virtually unchanged from the day it came off the bench.
How hard is it to assemble?
It's a little labor intensive.
It is.
Yeah. It is all. It's obviously discrete. It's tube. It's not surface mount. It's hand done.
Right.
It's not even machine assembled. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And will you sign them?
for a price.
And where can the listener obtain them?
You can always call Retrospec.
Just call Retrospec. Any war stores?
I got one thing.
Yeah.
I just want to get off my chest.
Absolutely. Oh shit!
All right.
Do I owe you money?
We'll get to that.
Yeah. He's billing you for this, by the way.
Yeah, I hope so.
There's a frenzy going on with people buying gear off of eBay. Not that present company has anything at all to do with that.
Right.
But and the stuff invariably finds its way into my shop.
Yeah.
Right.
I would like to recommend to anybody considering something that they're going to buy off of eBay to get the technical documentation or check to see that it's available. And if you can't do that, don't buy anything more complicated than a flashlight off of eBay.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
That's very wise.
I got a question for you.
Unless you want to pay me a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right.
Which we do. You do great work. But here's my thing for you, and this is a good question to ask you, is I noticed a few years ago, like a bunch of the kids I know who were like, early 30s engineer guys were buying a bunch of military type compressors, or are you familiar, like Air Force, or I forget specifically what grade military.
Yeah.
But at one point I had a kid bring his new compressor into the studio to check out, and they were all raving about it. They're really great. And I plugged a vocal into it, and it went from being like full length size to like really small. And I like tried messing with it, and it just kind of was bad. But it seemed like all the, you know what I mean? And how is that a phenomenon you're familiar with? Like,
well, the military, I mean, a lot of this old stuff is good. I mean, a lot of it is good, and a lot of it is not good. They did make bad things back then. Mm-hmm. The military, they hired a lot of really big companies, they hired RCA, they hired Melcor, they hired, I think even API got involved, to make things for them, and it's very use specific. I have a Melcor compressor that I've had sitting around for years that was used in a submarine. And what it's used to do is to, if you got on a microphone and you made a public announcement on the submarine, you wanted it to be compressed and you wanted it to be very frequency specific.
Like AM radio compressor.
Like 1K.
Yeah.
Well, even more like telephone.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you just wanted to take the human voice and make it as intelligible as you possibly could. So this thing, it's this huge, heavy piece of equipment, and it looks fantastic. You know, you would want to use this thing.
Right.
But it sounds horrible.
Did you get that on eBay? No, just kidding.
I think somebody did.
It looks good, but it sounds horrible.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why, like, 80 series Neves look a little bit like military gear, or have the look of a battleship. Or
Yeah. Well, you'd have to
Interesting.
ask Rupert.
yeah,
I wonder if he remembers.
yeah.
Wow.
But gray. Something
Battleship gray.
serious, something
Yeah.
you should take seriously.
Right. Which is why I enjoy the new colors. You
Yeah.
have new colors for the retrospect
Yeah.
stuff.
Wait,
I like that.
new colors. What do you
Yeah,
mean?
they're coming
New
out.
colors. We now have some overlay, so you can get a squeeze box
Oh,
in
cool.
red, or
I love the
blue,
classic white, though.
or green.
New colors are nice too.
Okay, cool. What, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah.
More.
You said to me something like someone else was doing it or something, or
Well, the story that I love to tell is that I was at an AAS show, and somebody came up to me and said, well, many people have come up to me and they've said, oh, look, great, the juice box, a tube thing. And they see the XLR on the front and they say, can I plug a mic into that? And I said, well, no, you can't do that. It's unbalanced, it's high
Right.
impedance, it's,
that's also your output, right?
yeah, that's for the output.
Right.
And the face sags and they're disappointed and all that, and
Right.
they walk away. So that's been my woeful position all along. And somebody came up to me, just like dodged out of the line, and said, "Do you know you make a mic pre?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Okay, here's what I did." And he did what you do now, which is
Right.
to get a mic to line adapter,
Yeah.
plug it into the juice box, and bada bing,
But I also go into a mic pre after your mic pre.
you do.
Yeah, which maybe is wrong, but it seems to make that 57 sound like a Neumann 87.
Okay. Have you tried it without?
I have never tried it without, but I will now.
Okay.
But anyway, so there's this amazing thing. Ken, one day I was dropping something off, and he was like, "Hey, you should try this thing." This technique of putting the mic into the DI. And I think, I don't even know where I was the first time I did it, and I brought up, so we talked about this. I'm a KM84 and a 57 on the snare drum. So I brought up the KM84, and it always sounds like an expensive mic. And then I brought up the 57, and I was like, holy fuck, this sounds great. And it's the thing where now I'll never do a snare.
Can you explain it? Why it sounds good, or
Hey, tubes.
Right. Okay.
No, I mean, actually, I don't believe that right out of the box. I think that little adapter that you use works really well into this. I think that's what it is, because all that is a humble, transformer of
Yeah.
some kind. It's a step-up transformer. And, most of the time you're plugging it into a guitar amp or some other, humble device. But this treats things that are in high impedance really, really well. So I would suspect that the transformer is working really well. And No.
In the box. The
No.
transformer in the turnaround.
That's right.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
So it's the effect, because, there's this kind of complex relationship that you've established between this transformer and this box here.
The DI box.
Yeah.
The juice box.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
What about,
that's...
the microphone just happens to be the front end, and it's not really the microphone. It's the transformer.
Well, there's a little bit of the microphone, too.
Right.
Because the microphone is plugged into the transformer, and the transformer is plugged into a device. Now, the impedance of the device is reflected back through the transformer to the microphone. It's not a simple relationship at all.
Right.
So I think the fact that this has, imposes a very low load on the transformer goes back to the microphone, and you've got this happy thing happening where the microphone is actually working into a higher impedance.
very cool.
Great.
Very cool. That's great.
Yeah, Stu, you should try it. I mean, it really.
I'd love to do that. Yeah.
It really blew my mind. Like the first, like I said, I just now, whenever I tracking sessions, my two favorite things are gun mufflers and then the juice box.
Plugs in the juice.
We're thinking about making gun mufflers, by the way. So
that plug right into
They go with it.
that go with it. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Gear Club would like to thank today's guests and the folks that made today's show necessary. Our executive producer, Joe Lepton, Pete DeKilla, our technical director, musical director, Melef Lewis, and our legal counsel, the firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. And remember, all men and women are created equal. Iser. And I'm your announcer, Bella Pearl and Yellow.
What are you guys doing? A podcast? Come on.